Creative Magic Club. Hi everyone, welcome. I'm so excited to introduce my special guest today. We have with us Juliana Barbati. She is a dynamic podcast strategist, consultant, and owner of a top boutique podcast production agency. Her specialties include marketing, SEO, copywriting, and monetization, all of which allow her to help entrepreneurs elevate their voices and spread their inspiring messages. Juliana's passion goes beyond business. As a born-again Christian, she is deeply passionate about the Bible and her faith in Jesus. And she lives in El Salvador with her husband, 2 homeschooled littles, and her ever-expanding breed of cats. Hi, Juliana. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so Juliana, someone put me on to you. They were like, this woman has had loads of success with helping people reach, top rankings with their podcast. And so obviously I was like, I need to get in on that and love all of your stuff. And I'm so excited to talk more about podcasts, to dive into podcasting as an audience growth strategy. I know you have you're not a big fan of social media because you're all in on the podcasting. So we're definitely going to dive into that. But before we do, tell us your story. How did you get to doing this work?
Okay, so a little bit of backstory. In 2018, my husband and I decided that we were going to start an Amazon store. So, that's how we got started in the online space, was with e-commerce. And then our store hit 6 figures within 2 years. And then also the pandemic happened in 2020. And because we were home staring at each other, I was like, what else can I do? So in 2020, I decided to open up an Etsy shop, and the Etsy shop took off. So then I was like, what is the next thing? I was like, well, I'm going to start a podcast and teach women how to do what I did. So I did that. And, I launched my podcast to an audience of 0. I didn't have an email list. I didn't have a social media following or anything. And then the podcast again took off. So then, I was really going all in my podcast, but then, and the podcast I launched May of 2020. And then we get to December of 2021, and I'm like, I have said everything there's to say about e-commerce. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And there is more of me that needs to come out. I'm really great at copy, and I'm really creative in other things. I really feel like I can really balance the really strategic side with the creative side. And I needed to expand. So I started to take inventory of my life, and I was like, okay, what else could I do? And I was like, well, I have a successful podcast. I can teach people how to do the same. And I know the pain points, or I know very well what podcasters need. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. But, I kind of juggled. I was in the space of can I really do this? Can I let go of the Etsy coaching space and go into podcasting? So for a little while, my business was growing speakeasy style. It was just word of mouth, and it was growing and growing and growing. And I was having a hard time with the growth. And I was like, listen, I'm just going to go all in with the podcast and shut down the Etsy side because, imposter syndrome, right? I was trying to balance both. I was like, in some world, this 2 match, and I can marry the 2. But anyway, March of 2022, I go all in with the podcast agency, and it just took off. And then to be able to turn around and to do the same for my clients has just been so amazing to see, because all of my clients, they have top ranking podcasts. And to be able to say that, I'm like, okay, it's time for me to own this. And this is it. This is how it started. It was just, I didn't always know this is what I wanted. I'm not a speaker by any means. It just kind of it was an evolution,
Yeah, I love that. Just following the breadcrumbs, letting it all unfold. It's not like you were a kid being like, I want to be a podcast coach.
No, or even a business owner, I wanted to be a housewife. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom when I was younger, before I knew the reality of raising littles and all that. This was not for me. It was not what I wanted. It was not what I pictured,
So that's awesome. And I know that, something that you talk about a lot and that you help your clients with is using a podcast as an audience growth strategy, and one that doesn't require you to be posting on social media, which I know is, we have complex relationships with social media. So I think this is a perspective that is really interesting, and I would love for you to tell us a little bit more about that. So it sounds like this kind of picked up through word of mouth off the back of your last business. But yeah, do you have any stories around like how you've helped clients to transition away from social media, or just what, what it can do for you to really have, like a loyal podcast audience in your business?
Yeah, I mean, so my own journey was, I just got really burned out by social media. There was a period in my life that I really wanted to be an influencer and like, take some pictures on floaties and post on Instagram, make money. And I'm like, I hate Instagram. I hate selfies. Like, I cannot even take good pictures. Like, what am I thinking? But, I was waking up. There was a time in my life I was waking up at 4 a.m. I had a 2-year-old and a newborn. And I was like, following the formula, like give 5 likes, comment a few emojis, and then like leave a thoughtful comment. Like, who does that? Like, I was doing it. And I was just so burnt out. And when 2020 rolled around and we were like staring at each other, I'm like, I'm just going to start this podcast. I don't care about social media. That's not going to be my strategy. I just really have always hated social. I have been blocked off social so many times. And like, I am a stalker. I'm not a poster. Like, why am I getting like banned from Instagram? So in November of 2022, I'm like, I'm done. And I just deleted my account. I did not like permanent delete it, but I can get back in if I want to, but you cannot find my profile now. And my business like took off. For my clients, some of them still have the love and hate relationship with podcasts. So I have to do like a lot of coaching and like, listen, this gets to be easy, make the podcast the main thing. And, it's not for everybody. Like for some people, they do enjoy coming on social and like talking about whatever and having that connection. For me, I get the fulfillment from like email or like my Facebook. I still have my Facebook. So, I respect my clients and what they want to do, but a lot of them are like, I'm done with social. I've had multiple clients who just got banned. They had like thousands and thousands of followers, and like one day they lost it all. So they have been learning through like experience, through life. Like, I have to rely on the podcast because, I don't want to say it's impossible for you to get canceled on a podcast. The only person I know is Alex Jones. And we know why that happened. But most people are not getting canceled on a podcast versus on social media. Like, there's always something happening. Plus the algorithm changes, like you get the hang of it and then like 5 minutes later, the algorithm changes. Whereas on a podcast, there is an algorithm, but it's very stable. And the changes are very subtle, and it really does work in your favor. And once you know the foundational pieces of a podcast, that's it. Like, you're good, you're set. You have just as much of a chance to rank as the celebrity coach next door, which is amazing.
Yeah, I love that. And that was definitely a big part of the appeal for me in starting a podcast. Like, I love that every time I log in and I look at my statistics, like those numbers are only going up,
Yes.
And the fact that it's evergreen content that people, because of the SEO, people can continue to find it, can continue to benefit from it, which, is true to some level on social media, but it's completely different. Like you say, with the algorithm. And yeah, I've had one of my accounts just taken away from me, like no customer service. Like, we put our heart and soul into building those communities. So I think it's really smart to make sure that, we're just making those decisions to have ownership of our audience. So I love that we're having that conversation. Do you have any great success stories for anyone who's like thinking about starting a podcast? Like, what kind of audience numbers and download numbers do you see in your clients when they really start to, be able to sustain an income from their business through their podcast?
The interesting thing is that it varies. Like, I have clients who maybe get 200 downloads per episode, and I have clients who get like thousands of downloads per episode, and they're both making money with their audiences. Why? Because their message is important, because they're not censoring themselves. They're just being themselves, and like really making that connection with the listener. So they get to make money no matter where they are on the spectrum, so, and they're monetizing with their products and their services. So they're not even waiting on advertisers to come in and do promos or anything like that. It's all with their services. So all of my clients, they are service-based providers. So they have something that they're selling, whether it's coaching, a program, some sort of offer. And this is how they monetize their podcast. I have one client actually who does not use her podcast to monetize anything, but she uses it to land interviews with like some really amazing people that are like totally household names in the podcast industry. So that's what she uses her podcast for, which again, it's just like the flexibility that a podcast gives you, that you can do whatever you want with your podcast, and if you are somebody who wants to run ads or anything like that, there's room for you too, so there's not like, this is how we podcast and there's only one way. And that's the beauty about like what I do in my agency, is that I can really see my client and their goal, and we can work out something that works for them at the end of the day, if they want to do ads for another company or if they want to monetize with their own programs and services. We're here for it all. And for some people, they don't want to monetize. They just want to have the really good, amazing conversations, which in a way, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know, right? So like building those networks and like really having access to people that you wouldn't have access otherwise, right? Like it just opens up so many opportunities for you. Like this one client that I can think of, she even got on TEDx, so it's just a world of possibilities.
Hi loves, I wanted to let you know that I made a special free gift just for you. It's called the Cash Injection Ritual, and it's my 3-step method that you can use to create extra cash sales starting today. I used to suck at making consistent money, and I believed I would never be good at sales because I refused to do anything that feels out of integrity. Then I discovered the powerful mindset shifts I'm about to share with you, and I implemented this cash injection ritual to double my income 3 years in a row, making it to 6 figures in my dream coaching business. Now I'm so effing excited to share this work with you so you can start receiving the money you so deserve. So click the link in the description or go to withsarahmac.com and you can download the cash injection ritual from the freebies menu at the top of my page. Please remember to share your celebrations with me when the extra sales and cash starts to roll in. Before we get back to the episode, I have something exciting to tell you about. There were a couple of key things that changed everything in my life as an entrepreneur that allowed me to bring in 6 figures while working half as many hours and having more fun than ever before in my business. It was money mindset work around how I was doing business, combined with getting good at sharing strategic sales content online. I know you know that this is your year to start hitting your 10K month income goal and living the life of creative freedom and fulfillment you have been dreaming about. You're ready to be consistently attracting total dream soulmate clients through the creative content you're sharing on social media, and you want to be reaching more people, charging higher rates, and working much less. So I'm very excited to invite you to join me in Freedom Club, my mastermind, where you'll receive tailored high-level support to master the skills that will create your dream life and 6-figure dream business starting now. With focused weekly trainings and coaching calls to find the clarity on your content that's going to make you the most money, to design a simple, fun launch strategy you'll enjoy following through on, plus daily support and feedback from me in the Voxer chat, you'll find that sweet spot in your business where you're the most confident in your work, having the most fun, and making the most money. Go to withsarahmac.com/freedom club to apply now. Now let's get back to the episode. So what would you say are kind of like the foundational pieces of a really good podcast?
Okay, so first, and I'm always afraid to say this because people tend to tune out, but it is SEO. But SEO on a podcast is so different than like a website, where a website takes you like 1 year for you to rank on Google. On podcasts, you can like literally rank right away, and you can see how things change like very quickly inside of a podcast. So and don't be afraid. The way that I teach SEO, it's like nobody else does it the way that I do it. I make it super simple, and once you understand like the basics of SEO, and you're like, okay, SEO is actually super helpful. It's not like this thing that we made out to be like only geeks understand. Like we can all understand SEO, and it's actually super simple. Obviously consistency, right? So you do have to stay consistent. So whether you're going to do seasons and you're going to show up for the season, or if you're like me, like I show up on my podcast, I've been podcasting for 3 years nonstop. That works for me, but I'm like super consistent, and I have taken breaks, meaning, I have done the crazy thing where I do 1 episode a day for 30 days. And now it's summer and I'm doing 1 podcast a week, whereas I usually do 2 episodes a week. But that consistency is key, and honestly, like saying what you want to say, because if you're censoring yourself, if you're not allowing your message to come through, you're not going to connect with people, right? If you're scripting your episodes, it's just going to sound robotic. So I do not let my clients script their episodes because it takes you out of the flow. I'm all here for bullet points and having some guidance, but like, let's not script, because that's not the point of podcasting, so those really are the foundational pieces of the podcast. And listen, it's not the editing, right? It's not making sure that you have this perfectly edited show. It is really about you being yourself and showing up, letting yourself be heard and be seen, and focusing on that SEO, because the SEO is how you grow inside of the podcast app. And the beauty is, I really focus on Apple because Apple is the biggest player. Apple starts to promote you organically, just by you using those keywords in the right place. Apple is like, oh, okay, you are in this bucket, and the person who listens to this podcast will also enjoy podcasts. I'm going to let them know for you, which is amazing, and which is how my podcast grew. My podcast, I have never done ads for my podcast. I am an organic marketing person through and through. So that is the beauty of that.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually want to talk about SEO, for anyone who doesn't know, is search engine optimization, because particularly for my audience who are super creative, love to just self-expression is the name of the game. And sometimes some of this strategic thinking can feel a little stifling, a little lead you to kind of overthinking, or just definitely creates friction. And I just want to share my experience with it, because I used to write SEO for clients when I was a copywriter, and I didn't like doing it, trying to fit the keywords into the descriptions. It's hard, right? It's hard to be analytical, or it can be. So I moved away from that super quickly. I, outsourced SEO in my own business because I didn't want to be doing that. And then I joined your program because I was like, let's put some intentionality into my podcast. I've been doing it for 2 years. I know this is going to help me allow it to reach more people. And, I definitely had some resistance around the SEO. And I've talked, in my friends, my friend entrepreneurs, we have resistance around SEO. But I was like, you know what? I know that if just by getting into this process and really learning it and learning a process, I can then hand that off to other people to do for me. But I just need to go through that process for myself. And I actually kind of had a breakthrough where it was I was doing the keywords, yeah, there was definitely it took me a while to get into it, but once I got into it, it actually started generating ideas, and it kind of sparked a different approach and a different way of creatively thinking about my audience, because it allowed me to think about well, what are people searching for? What are the words in people's heads? What are their curiosities around? What are the common words that people are literally putting into the search engine because they're trying to solve their problems? And I think that's just a good mindset to kind of get into that slightly more analytical, strategic approach to things. And obviously, once you've pulled all of your keywords together, then you can come back to them again and again and be creative in the way you're mixing and matching them. And yeah, and then if you want to outsource, the descriptions and stuff like that, you can totally do that. So I just wanted to share that because yeah, I don't know if you get pushback from your clients around the SEO process at all.
1000%, especially because they're all creative. So when we show them the titles, they're like, oh, they don't like the titles. But here's the thing: no matter how creative you are, how in the flow you are, when you go to Google and you search, how to lose weight on keto, that's how you are typing, for example, right? You're not how to release pounds. No, you're very straightforward with what you need. So no matter who you are on the spectrum of creativity, you're very matter of fact when you are searching for something. And this is how we have to think when we are creating those titles. So I still weave in creativity in the titles that I create. And make no mistake, the podcast episode itself is super creative and it's all me. But the titles, I have infused ways to be more creative with them. But I'd rather you have a podcast that every title is how to do XYZ, how to do ABC, rather than, blossoming into the next phase, because nobody's searching that, what does that even mean? So you have to be careful that your titles are not too, loosey, too creative, because what you think, you think people are getting it, but people are I have no idea what you mean, you know? So just being super straightforward in your titles is going to give you so much visibility. And, you know, just know that sometimes they're not the most creative, and that's okay. But your creativity gets to shine in other areas of your
And
podcast.
what do you have to say about, like, obviously this is really important when you're beginning and when you're establishing an audience and you want all of this strategy to be working for you to bring your content to new people. What do you like? If you had like millions of followers, would you still be using this strategy, or would you like be a little more like open with your SEO and keywords?
Honestly, I would personally stay in the SEO because I don't know, like, I could have like millions of downloads, right? But like, what about the person who's still searching? She has no idea who I am. I still want to be able to reach her and keep growing my audience, because what happens is then you're relying entirely on word of mouth, which is not a bad thing. But I want to be able to like reach, people without having to rely on anything but, the keywords. So I would still keep up with the keyword game no matter what. Even my clients who do have more reach were like, yeah, like let's make sure that the titles, and like, listen, that's really the only part of our podcast that we really have to be super focused, and like keywords are super important in your title. We can have a little bit more flexibility with the show notes, and things like that. But like your title, it is like the number one thing, the number one place where we need to be like super like matter of fact. And like, again, like you can still be creative, but like use keywords. Be creative, but use keywords.
Yeah. And I can attest to that from running my podcast for 2 years. It's like, yeah, the growth has been happening, but it's been happening very slowly. And I'm sure if I had implemented this kind of a strategy from the beginning, like I'd probably be in a different position, but that's okay. I started with, it's a process, right? Like building out each of the skills and the tools, like one piece at a time. But yeah, if you're thinking about starting a podcast or you're new, like definitely look into the SEO, because it's just a tool that can help you get a bump up. So I would love to hear if you have any words of wisdom for people like me who are like super multi-passionate, love to talk about many, many different topics. When it comes to kind of like niching and establishing your brand around, specific topics and keywords. Yeah, is there like a minimum? Is there a maximum? Do you have any words of wisdom on niching and kind of standing out in your brand, in your in your target audience?
Yeah. So, I think first of all, when I hear somebody's multi-passionate, usually there's a common thread, right? Like there is a thing that holds like all the pieces together, So really getting introspective here and finding out like what is the common thread? Because to you, you may think like, oh man, I'm all over the place. But like if you look deeper, there is a common thread there. And like really focusing on that is really going to help you. Another way to look at is like, let's say you do have way too many passions, right? And they don't all fit in. Like you have to like put yourself in like a smaller box. Okay. You can still bring in those pieces of you in your podcast. So for example, I live a non-toxic life, and I was living a non-toxic life before non-toxic was cool, like for years and years. I'm vegan, I'm Christian, I am like all these things. And they don't all have a place in my podcast, but I infuse them into my episodes. So I'll bring in like I'll talk about, how it takes me, I don't know, 5 hours to find a backpack for my kids, because backpacks you may not know, but they're super toxic, So it's a way for me to like educate my audience on something that maybe they wouldn't know, but I'm still talking about it. I'm not going on and on and on about the backpack, right? But I'm like talking about, I'm tying it in with something that I'm teaching in that episode. So it's a way for me to incorporate all the pieces that I am into what I'm putting out. Sometimes it doesn't all make it into one episode, and it doesn't have to. So giving yourself the flexibility that like not every episode is going to give you like all the aspects of your life. But I think, giving people, letting people have a chance to see these different facets of you will fulfill your soul while also helping you grow in your business, so that's how I would see. So taking a look and see, okay, if there is no common thread, then what is the thing that I really want to focus on? And then how can I support that with these other pieces of my life that are super important to me?
I love that. That's such a great answer. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of these nuggets of wisdom. There's so much to think about here, and I hope this is really inspiring people to go out there and, do your podcast and get it out there to more people, because there's also not that many women podcasters, and it's, it's really like a new channel relatively compared to other types of media. So I'm excited about podcasting. You're amazing. Everyone should definitely come and check out your work. Can you please tell us, like, what are you up to? Where can people find you if they want to know more?
Yeah, so my podcast is called Organic Marketing Simplified. And something really cool, I just got certified in subconscious marketing. So I'm going to be infusing that into the podcast and things that I do. So I am like the only podcast strategist who's also certified in subconscious marketing. So I'm super excited to see like what is this next evolution of myself and how I'm going to infuse it all together, because I have like way too many ideas right now. So yes, my podcast again is Organic Marketing Simplified. I am not on social media, but I am on Facebook, and you can totally friend request me. And I love seeing pictures of your kids, your dogs, your vacations, your food. So let's connect. And it's just my name, Juliana Barbati, and I'll give you that so you can put in the show notes. And yeah, come connect with me.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Juliana. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. Please share this with someone you know would benefit, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
For more inspirational content, head over to my website withsarahmac.com, and please support the show by liking, commenting, and subscribing.